Nintendo is removing Nintendo game emulation videos, particularly they're removing videos that feature their games being emulated, particularly on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
Now, I actually had a little chat with one of the creators that has been affected by this, and we've got a theory that we share, but why don't we go through Anthony's take here first, which is in the WAN Show doc. As Steam Decks reach consumers' hands, videos of using the Steam Deck as a Switch emulation machine are being taken down by the Big N. For the uninitiated, Yuzu, a Switch emulator, is able to run on the Steam Deck and PCs, and has some pretty desirable features, such as higher resolution rendering, game mods, higher frame rate support, and more. It does not, however, support Nintendo Switch Online services. Nintendo is famously anti-emulators, except when it comes to using emulation in their own products, and which was really awkward. It was was it the Mini NES or the Mini SNES?
Didn't they use like emulation code too from somebody else?
If I recall correctly, the NES Classic is based on open source emulation software. Yeah. So Nintendo's very against it, except when it benefits them.
We can sell this?
Let's be very, very clear that they have a line in the sand for when it's okay and when it's not.
Yeah.
And when it comes to emulating current gen consoles, it turns out that they are especially litigious. Now,
currently, the only way to legally dump your own Switch games is to have a modded Switch, which is relatively uncommon since Nintendo fixed the recovery mode exploit in 2018, and firmware 8.0.0 patched the browser exploit in 2019.
I had an OG Switch, and I actually gave it away at the Christmas party because I had treated myself to an OLED one, and I was like, oh, that was really stupid.
I still have one.
Yeah,
I might have access to a second, but I still have mine.
It's fine. I'm over it. Realistically, I can afford to just buy one on eBay if I need to dump a game or whatever. But I'm just very mad at myself.
Yeah, you can just borrow mine. But anyways, that means most Switch emulation is piracy in the legal sense.
That is to
literally this time.
Literally downloaded from the internet.
Yeah. The question of whether that's truly piracy if you own the game is thought to lean towards yes, legally. Only dumping your own is your own ROMs. Is legally protected, and even that's not settled in Nintendo's eyes.
Which is obviously, from an ethical standpoint, freaking ridiculous. If I have a copy of the game sitting right next to me on my desk while I play that game, not lent to a friend, sitting there, right there in front of me, while I play that game on my PC because I want save states, or I want to play at a higher refresh rate or resolution, or I want to use a controller that doesn't cost 90 Canadian dollars and is kind of ass, right? Like, there's a lot of reasons that I might wish to do it that way. I personally do not consider that to be, from an ethical sense, wrong.
Jaden mentioned in Floatplane chat that there was apparently one time where they sold a Mario ROM downloaded from a ROM site.
Oh, really?
I vaguely remember something about that, but yeah, that's funny.
Oh, Nintendo.
Someone there was tasked with creating a ROM to sell on some digital store, and they're just like, yeah, I'll skip the work and download it.
So here's the thing. Nintendo is within their right to protect their intellectual property from software piracy. That is absolutely the case. However, none of what we just said empowers Nintendo legally to take down videos simply for showing their gameplay or showing that it is possible to do these things. So that's where Nintendo, utilizing copyright takedowns, gets into pretty murky water. Now, this is probably the most interesting part of all of this. I have a video featuring Nintendo Switch emulation with the Yuzu emulator. My video is still up. But my new friend, okay, the Fox, PHAWX, not FOX.
So not the local radio station.
No, not that either. So I'm so sorry. I don't know how to pronounce your last name, dude, but Carrie Golem? It doesn't matter. The point is, Carrie ended up with a whack of videos taken down. And I believe it was one of or some of his videos being taken down that ultimately prompted the news story that caught my eye. It was in my Google News feed that made me finally introduce myself to Carrie, because I've been aware of him for quite some time, but just hadn't really had an occasion to talk to him. And in our back and forth, I'm not going to put any words in Carrie's mouth, because I think it's up to him how he wants to address this whole controversy. And I don't want to put him in a position where he feels like, because of what I said, he said, Nintendo might, come after him or feel like he would, whatever, right? Like, I don't want to put any words in Carrie's mouth, but I will say what I think. And I think the reason that this has mostly flown under Nintendo's radar up until now, but all of a sudden is enough problem that they went and removed not only Carrie's Steam Deck emulation videos, but also previous videos showcasing Switch emulation, was to send a message basically to attack a small creator who doesn't have the financial means or the time to defend themselves, as a kind of warning shot. Because the reality of it is, Nintendo did not use the correct mechanism to attack Carrie. Yeah. Streaming gameplay footage, I don't believe has actually been tested in court, but my understanding is that it would be pretty defensible from a fair use standpoint, particularly in the context of reviewing a hardware device and using that software to demonstrate and that intellectual property, because really it's only the source code would be copyrightable. It's the trademarks, it's the imagery that Nintendo feels is being violated when people show their gameplay footage. So in the context of using that software to review a hardware device, that is highly transformative. Maybe arguably affects the market for the original work. So that's where some game streaming does run into a little bit of trouble. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head what the other two pillars are. Pillars of fair use, blah, 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 the 4 factors. Here we go. Purpose and character use, the nature of the copyrighted work. So it's a game showing a game being played on a gaming device. I think that's pretty defensible. The amount and substantiality of the portion taken, obviously negligible. I mean, you're not getting the story. You're not getting the gameplay experience. You're not having the fun. You're just seeing it running on a screen. I think that it would be pretty defensible if we actually made it there. But Akash Kumar points out in the Twitch chat that fair use is an argument. It's not a legal definition. You would actually have to litigate it. Yeah. So Nintendo either is kind of going, okay, we're going to send out a warning to the community.
It's very unlikely we'll actually end up in court over this.
Yep. And this is not the correct mechanism, but we are basically threatening to do something else if you don't get in line and stop showing Switch emulation. So naturally, my response to this is that I need to get my hands on a Switch that allows ROM dumping, and I'm going to make a video. I'm going to dump some ROMs, and I'm going to run them on the Switch. You ready for the next part? All right, did I say on the Switch? I'm going to run them on the Steam Deck.
Yeah.
I'm going to have the cartridges right next to me, showing that I fully backed them up, and I'm running them on my Steam Deck. And I'm going to see what happens.
My Switch has a cool, clear, purple plastic back. And should be old enough to ROM dump.
All right.
I can bring that in.
Well, that sounds pretty interesting to me, because the reality of it is I don't think there's any legal foot to stand on. And I can play my Nintendo games on my Steam Deck to my heart's content.
Epic.
Using my Yuzu emulator. So I'm very excited.
There's a question
ready.
here from Anthony that I think is really good. Does the Streisand effect make this much more likely to spread? I mean, we're talking about it on this show. There's probably going to be other people talking about it. I've seen news articles about this already that are not from us. Will this literally just make it worse for Nintendo? What do you think? I think absolutely.
I don't know. I mean, emulation's not like, it's not new. I don't think people like don't know about, I shouldn't say that, because there have been some extremely ignorant responses to my tweet about this. And I'm not like saying like these people are dumb or evil or anything like that. They're just extremely ignorant. Like you'd see people saying there is no reason to emulate a game. There are lots of reasons to emulate a game. I mean, we mentioned some of them already. If you want to play them at a higher resolution.
Frame rates.
Or if
there's a lot of Nintendo games that throttle really hard when there's too many things going on screen.
I mean, Breath of the Wild is a launch game, and it, like, doesn't run great.
Yeah, it gets pretty rough.
Like, I mean, save states are a huge one. Speed running.
In Flowplane chat, there's I wasn't aware of Yuzu. I am now, and I will be using it. Okay, and like in my experience from growing up, usually it was generations past that were emulatable.
Yeah. Well, the fact that the Switch is so underpowered, like
that's fair.
I mean, it's a phone from like 6 years ago. Like that's what actually runs the thing. So it's not, to be clear, massive respect to the engineering that goes behind creating an emulator for any console. But that particular one, we didn't have to wait a long time for the computer hardware to get powerful enough to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, save states, save lives, says Conrad, 100%. So yeah, speed running, I mean, that's a community that has absolutely contributed to Nintendo's footprint as a gaming company. Yeah. But they tend not to see things that way. It's in this very black and white sort of narrow view. And I invite Nintendo to issue a copyright takedown of my video claiming that I've infringed upon their footage, because I will not have, and that'll be interesting. Yeah, I intend to dispute it.
I think in no small part because of these types of things, and I genuinely mean it quite strongly, that in no small part because of these types of things, Roblox is now worth more than Nintendo.
Really?
Yeah. Well, I heard that. I haven't like looked up the information myself, but I was informed that is the case.
Wow, that's crazy.
Roblox is like Birdie's gummy for a bunch of reasons. There's videos about that on the YouTubes, but yeah, they're worth like a ton. And Nintendo, if they keep going after content creators, is they're going to keep having issues.
I've got another really cool example of why emulation is super sick. It's a great way to be able to run like filters on your, like if you like a particular look on the game, like if you're playing a SNES game on an LCD instead of on a CRT, you can add scan lines. You can add anti-aliasing, for example, to PS1 games, making them actually look better than they did on the original console. Like I said, it's just kind of amazing to me, like people who think emulation. There was this big argument on, I think it was Twitter, where someone was saying how hard emulation is, and I said something along the lines of like, I'm sure your nephew could do it. Like it's.
Oh, I thought they meant like the creation of emulators.
No, like playing
running your own emulators.
It's not hard. It's not hard. Like it's very in some
easy. Cases it's like notably easier. To be completely honest, I don't know.
To be clear, like I don't remember the last time I played a pirated Nintendo game, like especially a current one. Like I own a Switch. I also own I don't own that Switch anymore. I own a Switch OLED. I actually Luke's not going to like this, but I buy almost all my stuff through the Nintendo eShop. Oh. I don't buy physical I don't want to keep track of that. Oh. I put a big fat micro SD card in that thing, and I just like download my games. I got my kids Ring Fit Adventure for Christmas.
You're like very likely just going to lose all those games.
Like,
but then I guess you can just emulate them.
Right?
Yeah.
So there's a valid use for emulation.
When Nintendo screws you over because of some like shop going offline or whatever.
I will utterly shamelessly emulate those games.
Yeah.
Shamelessly.
And now that you have a Steam Deck, it's like not even that different of a format.
So that's the big theory I wanted to talk about. That's why I think Nintendo is issuing a crackdown on this right now, because up until now, emulation of particularly the Switch has been a niche use case. It's been people who are sitting at their computer for the most part. Nobody has media PCs, especially not ones that are powerful enough to run Yuzu for the most part.
Yeah.
Nobody has handhelds that are actually running this thing, at least not in any volume. Like a GPD Win or an Aya Neo. Okay, there's hundreds of us out there, right? Like it's not... The Steam Deck is going to ship millions of units. All of a sudden, and it's in a form factor that is admittedly much larger than the Switch, and particularly the Switch Lite, but in a form factor that is now competitive with the Switch. And so all of a sudden, Nintendo's going, O's to no, people are going to figure out this is a thing. We better make it go away. I changed my mind. There's definitely some Streisand effect going on here.
Yeah.